Gather round for the Oke Farm Pondcast with Doug Davis.
Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe where we start is the first call I got. What do you think?
Yeah.
So
First call from me.
No.
First call you got from
first call for the farm.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how are people in?
Oh yeah.
Know?
Oh yeah, I've heard this story. I love this story.
Yeah. So I guess even before that, should I introduce myself and you? I mean,
I think if people are watching, they know who you are at least. I'm Curtis, and this is the episode 1 of the
what will hopefully
podcast.
Be a bunch of future stories about the farm.
Yep.
I mean, our goal is to, at least in my mind, like get people familiar with us, what we're doing here, what our mission is. But again, I think for those who don't know about the farm, one of the first questions that I always get is like, where did the idea come from, or how did it happen? And so, for me at least, I was driving home from Auburn University. I was dropping my daughter off at her first year of college. And I was all by myself in the truck, and I was driving through Tifton, Georgia. And my phone rings, and the name on my phone was Jeff Meyer. And mind you, I haven't talked with Jeff at that point, it had been probably at least 10 years, maybe 15 years. So I pick it up, I'm like, yo, Jeff, what's up? And he's like, Doug, the way he talks. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, hey, I just got back. He had moved to Wyoming on a huge alternative energy project. And he said, I just got back and I had some land that I wanted you to take a look at with me. Now, let me give you a little bit more context. This is the summer following the pandemic, right? Like the pandemic breaks out.
2020 or 2021?
This is 21. So
okay.
This is this is probably 14 months after that March breakout, or what would become obvious at that point. And so the world was still kind of rocking, and we were in the wake of everything unfolding. So I was like, I'd love to come take a look at it. So I meet Jeff up here at what's now called the farm, and Jeff had a portion of this land that he had bought maybe 20 years ago. And where you and I are sitting right now, which we call the farm laboratory, this was really, with the exception of the orchard, all the olive bushes, this was really the only agriculture that existed. And you can't see it now, but as I looked around, I saw chicken tractors and pigs and just all kinds of like stuff going on. And we walked around here, and then we walked around the rest of the land. And so coming into this, I knew that Jeff wanted to create something that was going to be bigger than just maybe another organic farm. He knew my background was conservation-based development. And so, the big question on the table was, did we see something that we could work on together that could be bigger than what either of us could imagine? And so I spent the day here with him looking around, and I was super energized. Like, I had wanted to do something like this during the Great Recession back in the aughts, but I had no idea to even think at this scale. So we leave, we talk about it more, and then ultimately what's born out of the idea is a regenerative operation that, for those who may not even know what regenerative is, it's really just it's a pretty simple concept. It's using cover crops and animals to mimic cycles that nature would usually deploy in order to better the topsoil, right? So historically speaking, or at least for the last 75 years, we've been using these heavy fertilizers, and we haven't been using cover crops, and we haven't been rotating crops, and we're just depleting our topsoils. And so this is really hearkening back to maybe the way that our great-great-great-great-grandparents would have farmed, where they had small farms, they were growing all kinds of stuff, and they were using common sense in order to improve the soil instead of all of these inputs. And so, our concept was, hey, what if we could create what it would have been like 200 years ago to have everything that you would need, all the fruits and the vegetables, the proteins, and the relationships, importantly, to grow up, or to raise kids and to grow our own selves in the spirit of a community that's bound together in moving forward, with this one mission. And so that was really that was kind of the day that the farm at Okefenokee was born.
So on your drive home, like, your mind had been swimming, but what were like the top 3 things you're like, oh, this would never work because of this?
Yeah. Well,
if there were any.
Yeah. No. Certainly. I mean, on the drive home, I was mostly focused on the what if, right? Like not the negatives, what would prevent us, but what could this be? Like I was focused on, I've grown up in this area, and for most of my life, I've enjoyed the fruits of the land. I've tried to live off the land largely with whether it's catching things, fish, shrimp, killing things, deer, hogs, turkey. I've tried to grow things, but me personally, I don't have a green thumb. So I've struggled, but I've always tried to grow things or raise chickens. And so for me, I've had this lifelong pursuit of not necessarily separating from the grid or separating from everyone else, but taking all the tangible benefits of healthy, clean eating and creating a path for myself. And so as I began thinking about, hey, we could show other people how to do this at a scale that's probably never been done before. That's where I was focused on. And I'll tell you, it really was born out of, if I had to give credit to at least my personal journey, it was born out of a book by Michael Pollan that I had read 20 years ago or so called The Omnivore's Dilemma.
Yeah.
And in the book, it outlines, number one, what the problem is, the industrial food chain, the centralization of and the commoditization of everything that we grow and eat has been centralized into these brokerage relationships, and we're bringing stuff in from all over the world. And so, he brings to bear this industrial food chain, which, ultimately downstream effects was processed food and so forth and so on, inhumane care of the animals that we eat. And so, but then he proffers a solution, which is, number one, a regenerative farming solution, which I happen to now, 15, 20 years later, see in action. And then the other one is this idea of foraging and hunting and stuff like that. And so all I could think about, Curtis, was I've known that this problem existed. It was clear that and I don't know. I mean, I think most people, if they open their eyes, they would agree that the problem exists, but most people don't. What do you do with it?
Yeah.
How do you even begin to solve that problem? And so all I could think about on the ride home is, hey, we can create a place that we can solve that problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you, I don't think I have, did I ever tell you about the business idea that I had for it was so 2013, 2014, I'm running my insurance practice, but I'm just having like all these ideas for side businesses. And I had come across something, I don't even know what it was, but it was something about the soil. It was probably a documentary that I watched, which talked about, I started to learn about how industrial farming is absolutely decimating our soils, and if we keep this up, we're not going to be able to
they only
grow
have so
food.
many years left on them, right?
Yeah. And I came across some product which, as I think back on it now, it probably wasn't legitimate, but it was like this microbes solution additive that was based on using real microbes that you could add to the soil, 100% organic, and that it would improve your soil. And I thought, gosh, we're living in Palencia at the time. Everybody's got St. Augustine grass. Every day you're watching the cycle of pesticide companies come in, spray the lawns, everything else. And I'm like, and I'm thinking about, I'm playing golf too, and I'm out there in the ponds and seeing the runoff there and the algae blooms and all of that. And I'm like, man, what if you could take this same concept and instead of spraying pesticides, you sprayed some kind of microbe solution. So in my mind, I was thinking you'd have 100 trucks, that go around and they ultimately replace the pesticide companies. And I started doing some research on it. And actually a colleague of mine at the time, his dad was in the agriculture school at University of Florida, had been there for a year, was a professor or whatnot. And I was like, hey, run this idea by him, and he got back to me pretty quickly. He's like, oh man, that thing's completely bogus. It'll never work. The only way that we have been able to, keep our soil good is by all these additives. You're going to have to put fertilizers on it. And
so
it's
like an industrial food chain. It's what you're taught.
I bumped right into that. I bumped
absolutely.
right into that big ag mentality, which is infiltrated through all of our university systems because they're funding them as well. And it's like, no, you can't do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
the prescription is you got to add this phosphorus and nitrogen, and you got to use this Roundup, and you got to use the genetically modified, plants that don't die from the Roundup, and it's the same old for sure. Yeah. And it's funny as we talk, my mind races around too. I mean, this whole idea is, through globalization and centralization, we've been sold a storyline that we're largely forced to endure. And so, look, the farm is not the solution to everything, but there is a narrative out there that I think COVID broke that open a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
I think that at least I'm asking a lot more questions now. And as I think about it, look, we don't want to go back in time completely because modern conveniences are amazing. And I don't want to take that away. But there are things that our great-great-great-grandparents did for a reason, and that made a whole lot of sense. And this idea of decentralizing our food and doing things in a much more natural way, I think it's taken fire. I think a lot of people are interested in this. And so the old pillars and institutions that say, no, you can't do that, it's like a lot of people are, rather than even fighting them, they're just going off and doing it themselves. And it's kind of like what we're doing here, I guess you could say a little bit.
Absolutely. So, I started to see right around that same time that you had that call from Jeff, I started to see some of these examples of regenerative farming that were starting to spring up. They'd been around for a while, but they were finally starting to catch my consciousness through whatever, YouTube videos or whatever. And I was seeing these examples of these farmers, and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And to your point of this never having been really attempted before, yes, there's models of people doing regenerative farming, but I don't think anyone has successfully married regenerative farming to support a community of people who actually live on the farm.
Right.
And that's what's so cool about it. And it couldn't be a solution for everybody, but it is a replicable model that, I think, in fact, I know that sort of driving mission that underlies the farm for everybody who works here and the people who are moving here, Jenny and I included, is like, that's what differentiates this from just being any other residential community. Like, there's a higher purpose that we're all sort of connected to. Like, if we can make this work, when we make this work,
well said.
It can be an example that other people can be like, you know what? I don't have to commit myself to, the way things have always been done here recently in the last 40 or 50 years. There is a way to embrace all of the practices, particularly farming practices from the past, and marry those with modern conveniences and live in a way that is so much more authentic. And that mission, that underlying goal is something that it bonds people in a way that is completely unique. I was thinking about it, actually, before I was an adult, before I grew up, like the way that I envisioned, being an adult and being in community with others is that there would be this sort of collaborative spirit, you know? Like, you'd be connected to your neighbors and you would help each other out, and you would bring your skill sets to the table and everybody else would, and you'd be part of, larger projects that benefited everyone, right? And then you grow up and you realize, like, it ain't that way. Like, maybe you have a couple of friends here and there, but I remember living in neighborhoods and feeling completely disconnected from all the people that I'm living around. And, here, with just a few people that are a part of this community now and the ones that are coming, like even some conversations I had last night with some people, it's like everybody's like, how can I contribute
to
the overall project, which has been something that I did not know we would experience coming out here, but has been absolutely one of the absolute joys of being part of this, because you start to feel like, oh, we're building more than just a regenerative farm. We're building a way of life which I think it most closely resembles the way people used to live in communities years ago.
Yeah, you know, when you started off, you were describing why we're so different. You were talking about that we're certainly not the first ones to pioneer regenerative farming, because we're absolutely not. I want to be the first to admit we're not experts on it. We're learning. This is a work in progress. I mean, there's great, the ones I look to. Gabe Brown had wrote a great book I read early on. Will Harris, I think his name is, has an incredible regenerative. I mean, so we are absolutely not the pioneers. We're absolutely, I mean, I wouldn't even want to put myself in the same class as them. But what we are doing different, I think, is we're merging the spirit and the ethos of the regenerative farming practices, the aim towards you know, the reduction in the input and all of the things that these experts could spend hours talking about, like that's our aim. But at the same time, we're also blending in the community effort that you're trying. I mean, so if you think about it, I get a lot of questions from people. You may have heard or seen in the paper about agrihoods. Are you familiar? You've heard about those? So look, I'm not demeaning agrihoods at all, because I think anything that moves us in the direction and the spirit of what we're talking about is positive. But we get grouped into that agrihood, you know, kind of element a lot. And so what I would tell you is, you know, you've got this kind of one extreme of regenerative agriculture that is really just agriculture to provide protein or other things on a retail basis. And then you've got a neighborhood, and maybe it's even an agrihood. You know, my experience with agrihoods has largely been that it's mostly a master plan community with a theater of a farm, you know, a couple acres, but in no way is it going to support the neighborhood. And so what we really have is kind of like a Venn diagram where these two things come together. And that's kind of like the farm at Okefenokee. I mean, we've got a full working farm. So if you walk around here, the vast majority of what you see is operating farm, and the minority of what you see are these little small villages that are nestled into the farm itself. And so as people are trying to maybe visualize what we're talking about as we're chatting, I mean, it's literally, it's like this big farm and these little neighborhoods that are just right in the middle of all the farming. So we are really, I think, pioneering something here. Another funny thing, I mean, people will call and ask, you know, all kinds of questions, and they will ask like, well, what can I look at that's similar to what y'all are doing? And I always tell them, I'm like, look, I don't say this from a place of arrogance, but more humbly, like if there was a model out there, my job would be way easier, right? Like we're making this up as we go largely, and so. It's I tell people it's both exhilarating and terrifying all at the same time. So that's what it's like to live here, right?
And you said something last night we had a great event last night with Frank Frangie and folks he brought out here, and I was listening to you on the segment they had, and you said something I had not heard you say before. You may say on the tours all the time, but I thought, oh my gosh, that's absolutely perfect, and it speaks to what you're talking about. It's like, you know, there's dirt roads here. You are literally on a farm, getting up to your cabin and everything else, and you know, that's not what you're going to find in these agrihoods. These agrihoods, the infrastructure is the same. You're on paved roads, you got sidewalks and everything else. Instead of the golf course and the pickleball courts, you got a community garden. You know, that looks good, but it's definitely not feeding the whole neighborhood, right? And so I think the distinction there is like, no, when you come here, you come onto a farm, and there just happens to be some parts of the farm that, you know, may have been set aside in a true working farm as livestock pastures or something else, have been carved out to these like beautifully well thought out villages, and you know, I mean, and like I never thought moving out here Like, what's it going to be like living on dirt roads all the time and everything else? Yeah. And neither did my wife, Jenny, you know, and she is someone who, you know, before moving out here, like the thought of like, you know, walking from a dirt, you know, driveway into the house and tracking in dirt, like that would have like probably horrified her, you know, and I don't think she fully thought about that moving out here. But to her credit, like she has fully embraced that, like, and that does not bother her at all, because in her, you know, daily trips out to the garden, you know, that's something that she never would have had the opportunity to do anywhere else, and to be able to walk out to the standing gardens and pick fresh produce for us. And like I was thinking about, like I've gotten kind of, I hate to admit it, but kind of sort of desensitized to just how fortunate we are with the produce. Like, you know, we've been here 18 months, I guess. And
first residence owners, by the way.
Yeah. The first 6 to 9 months, like every time we sat down to a meal, it was, you know, this came from the farm, this came from the farm, talking about what it was, all heirloom seed, you know, sometimes even look it up in the seed book to see it, you know, and every meal was like that. Jenny made a couple of unbelievable stir fries this week, and like, you know, she still knows everything that goes in it, and she's naming off things, and like, I didn't even know we were growing that now. Like somebody at the event last night was asking me, like, what's fresh right now? I was like, I don't know, but I had an unbelievable stir fry last night that had 8 different things that Jenny picked out of the garden in it. You'll have to ask her.
Well, you know, one of the things that you bring up when you're talking about the dirt roads, I love to share with people. I think anything great, especially that we experience in life, always exists in attention. And so I share with people that when you're at the farm, no matter what you're looking at, you can always visualize is this push-pull kind of tension relationship with, you were talking about the dirt roads. You know, we don't have to do those, but we could do the large roads, and we couldn't, you know, we could have automobiles inside the farm as opposed to the farm carts, but you compromise the scale of it, right? Like you have to build it so much larger if you're accommodating all of those things. So while your shoes are muddy and you need to take them off before you go inside, you get the blessing of just being right across the street from the crops too that you can go to. And so it's like everything's got this tension to it. One of the things people ask me about sometimes on tours, especially folks that aren't used to being maybe outdoors in the environment, we'll be riding along and they'll be looking at just all the just everything, and they're blown away. And at some point they'll look at me and they go, "Are there bugs out here? Or does it get hot?" And I smile and I say, "Yeah," but that's like part of life is enduring a little bit of pain in order to experience the beauty. And so much of our life, you know, again, I think I can speak for all of us who are either listening or me and you, like we've been conditioned that being in a comfortable numb is perfection. Like being in a heated or a cooled house all the time, or an automobile with the windows rolled up, and going to somewhere where you're sitting inside of a conditioned space, and like we have removed all of the pinpricks and all of the touch points of any pain out of our lives. And there's you know, whether it's music, whether it's rhythm, whether it's math, everything exists with highs and lows, with breaks and full areas, so that you can actually experience the rhythm of life. And I think one of the things that I love being out here at the farm is you experience the rhythm of life. Like you were talking about being desensitized a little bit to just how wonderful it is, but it's just like I was sitting out on the front porch this morning drinking some coffee, and like I couldn't get going because I was so overwhelmed by the sunrise and by the birds I was watching go from tree to tree. And it's like I knew I needed to get started with my day, but I was just sitting there just in awe. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about being out here at the farm is it gives people the opportunity to, be a little uncomfortable at times. You get a little hot, swat a mosquito off of you, but what you make up for is just so much more beneficial.
Yeah, and I think people are at least speaking for myself and for Jenny, I think, and I get the sense that there's a larger movement that people are starting to reject the idea of like, we're supposed to be comfortable all the time. We're supposed to merge with AI into some new life form. Yeah. Like people are a lot of people are resistant to that, you know? Yeah. And I think that's why we're seeing this, interest and movement in agrihoods and whatever it is to like kind of reject the direction that we're going in, and which I think is very healthy. And it actually gives me a lot of optimism. People who are scared about the direction with AI, I was like, no, I think humanity is going to sort of reject that at some point. Yeah. But, speaking to being in tune with everything, I just noticed this week the 2 chestnut trees that are up there by the welcome barn. I don't know how old they are, 100 years, 150 years.
And rare, old and rare. There's not many of them anymore.
Yeah. And they have been sort of the last trees to sprout leaves this spring, and Jenny absolutely loves chestnuts, and I'm up there every day, twice a day by the welcome barn. And so I was looking at them just on Monday, I'm like, God, I wonder when these things are going to start to bloom. And Doug, the next morning, these 2 trees are 30, 40 yards from each other? Within seconds, those trees sprouted leaves at the same time. So you cannot tell me that those trees aren't communicating with one another, and then like you get an appreciation for just how interconnected everything is.
I love that. How, hopefully we can keep this up, Curtis, in a way that adds value to people. Yeah. And as we're talking, even while we're talking, I worry a little bit about people thinking that we're like trying to sell the farm. Like that's not. So, I mean, I guess what I would offer up is, one of the things I hope to get out of this is just documenting what it's like to live a life like this more than anything, not being a sales pitch or anything else for the farm, because I mean, certainly we'd love to have other people that are like-minded come out and experience it. But, I think for me personally, as we continue to have these conversations, I just want to explore with you and within myself and talk about things that maybe we take for granted. Like it's that moment watching the trees sprout their new leaves and just being a place where people can come and maybe dream a little bit with us about like what life can be like if you're thoughtful and intentional, as opposed to just plugging into the matrix and the years clicking off and trying to accumulate some amount so that you can then go sit on the beach somewhere and be happy. Yeah. I mean, I think, again,
I think that's a good goal for this ongoing podcast is it doesn't have to necessarily be a sales pitch for the farm. Right. I mean, there's only so many lots that are available for people to come here. But I do think that there is this appetite and this thirst for living more authentically, and there's lots of ways people can do that. This isn't the only way, right? There may be more adventurous people who want to go buy 10 acres and do it on their own, and they've got the sophistication to do that. So I think just sort of sharing and bringing people along the farm at Okefenokee journey, I think is going to be really interesting and compelling to people because, there's certainly no straight path there. Like you said, it can be exhilarating and terrifying all at once.
And it is.
All the challenges
and that's one of the things, again, I like to share with people. I know I shared with you and Jenny when you guys have been so patient, but I mean, anytime you're starting something new like this, I mean, it's riddled with things that you didn't think about. Challenges that maybe you didn't contemplate. And so I think it's a beautiful metaphor for what we're doing out here. This whole idea of a regenerative lifestyle is about constantly getting better. And we're experiencing that individually as families. Yep. We're experiencing that as the farm team, those around getting better at our jobs, getting better at identifying what needs to be done. It's just like this. I tell one of my oldest daughters all the time, when we're pontificating, and she's really leaned into this, and I think it's so true. Life is really much more about a journey than it is about a destination. I know that sounds like something on a coffee mug, but how often do we really acknowledge that? Because we're always so targeted. Like we're focused in on, okay, we're almost there. We're going to arrive there.
It's if achievement-based lifestyle. Like,
if we can only.
Then I'll be happy.
And so one of the things, again, I love about being out here is like, there isn't really a there. There's a there here. Like we're in this moment, we're connecting and we're sharing. I mean, this is it. Like this is the goal. So yeah, I think that would be something fun that people can take away from this.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know we could go on for hours.
Yeah,
I probably will in the future.
Good stopping spot.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Probably so. All right.
Till next time.
All right. Till next time.
Sounds good.